Good morning, sunshines. Welcome back. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Death Trap. Now, I'm not going to give you all the answers to all the questions because that's your job to find out the answers to the questions. But we will talk a little bit about Death Trap. There's 5 characters in the play. Really, that's a major thing for you as stage manager to know is how big the cast is. They all play one character. There's one set. As you go through the script, again, there might be little additives as you go through with props being brought on and off and that sort of stuff. I'm carrying on the log to kill, not to ruin anything. But the biggest shift in the play is that you have the partner's desk brought on. And so as you're going through the production meetings and talking to designers, listening to directors, what you want to hear is answers to these questions. Again, it is not your job to answer the questions. It is your job to find out what the questions are and make sure that somebody knows if for some reason they go through a production meeting of Death Trap, if you're in a production of Death Trap as a stage manager and they don't discuss the size, shape, how to transition with the partner's desk, you need help. And somebody needs to point it out because it's very important. That is the only shift. Yes. Now, obviously, there's the whole sequence, the fight sequence. Those are important details, and again, it's one of those things where you want to listen mostly to make sure everything is safe. Obviously, there are many ways to deal with the log. There's a ton of weapons. Making sure that things are locked up at the end of the night is going to be a big safety concern for you, so that things like practical handcuffs, like weapons that discharge, that knives that may or may not spurt blood, whatever the effects are in the show. Again, it's not your job to design them, but it's your job to be prepared for what's coming and to plan for it. So having some sort of environment where you have access to some sort of closet and or space where you can lock things up at the end of the night, you need to know that because you have all these weapons that are going to be there, even the set dressing might just be swords and things that could be very dangerous if people were just sitting around playing with them, or you know, if they weren't nailed down or secured to the set. You need to make sure that at the end of the evening that those things are going to have a safe place to reside and that the crew knows how to handle them, etc. So that's what you're doing. You're going through the script, you're analyzing what's in the script, how many dressing rooms are you going to need. Again, with the limited cast, 5 characters, there might be some shifts, and then the psychic might have some additive things. You might have a coder, you know, the character, there's some time that passes between the days. And so having different outfits, and of course you gotta deal with the blood. Do we have blood? Is that something you got to deal with? So again, those are the things you're looking for. How do we get, one of the big things in this show is at one point you've got to get a character who is dead off stage, and the actors may not be able to carry them. And so finding solutions like having them die on a rug that you can then just drag the rug off, have 2 people drag the rug off. There's lots of solutions. You just need to make sure that again, what you're looking for, the answers to the questions that you don't know, other than just sitting down having dialogue. Some plays, sitting down having dialogue, great, easy. You have to keep up with the dinner or things like that. But in Death Trap, the specific problems are the weapons and the dealing with the safety issues that are involved in the show. Yes, what happens if the handcuffs don't actually ever unlock? God forbid. So what is plan B if the actor actually handcuffs them himself and they can't get out? Yes. So preparing for things to where those inevitabilities. I mean, again, you have a pair of handcuffs that are instead of being practical in the sense that they really are handcuffs, they Velcro as opposed to doing what handcuffs really do. And then that way, even though they're acting like they're done, you just unvelcro it. So that's a foolproof way of getting those handcuffs off. I'm not saying that's the answer, I'm just saying that's a possible answer. Having magnets, there's lots of answers to these things that don't require to actually have the handcuff physically unlocked. That would be the worst answer. Yes, having the handcuffs actually be able to handcuff is the wrong answer. Finding the answers that allow for all eventualities. Yes, I'm trying to be very nice here. but those are the answers you're looking for. Cool? So again, as you go through your analysis, it's not due until next week, but those are the type of things that we're going to talk about in class about the play itself. And if you enjoyed it, and all the type of things, what day it is, what time it is, and the dates, and all those things are nice to know, and are what the designers and the directors are going through as they analyze things. But as a stage manager, analysis is going to have a different skew. Yes, naturally, you're going to be more interested in the answers to questions that may be down the line for the director and the designer. Although things like how are you going to get the body off stage, how are you going to get the desk on stage, are important things. Yes, but exactly what type of coat and or scarf they need to wear, or if they have that type of stuff, while it's important to the costume designer, may not be important right off the bat. Yes. So again, you're making your little list, making sure that you know what questions you need answered. And again, your job is not to answer those questions. Your job is to make sure that someone in the production staff is aware of the questions and can answer them. Let them go through the natural design process, and 90% of the questions are going to be answered just by them having discussions about it, because they're going to analyze it and know that there are problems here or there and what research they find and all that sort of thing, and take care of some of the answers to some of the questions. Do desks have wheels? Do desks have, how do we stop the things that the roll also have to be able to make sure that they stop? So if there's a fight and somebody lands on the desk, it doesn't just roll around, yes? And so every solution may add additional problems. You don't know what those problems may be, yes? Fortunately, again, Death Trap is a well-written play, and so you've got that little intermission there to do this sort of stuff, but it still has to happen. And if you have a set that is closed into the wings that doesn't allow space for the desk to get through, then you're in a rough place. So you may need to add, but again, you've got a double door that has to open, so probably it'll work. But again, probably is not a good answer. Definitely is the answer. You want to make sure that things are definitely going to work. And so again, you're just looking through your analysis to find the problems and anticipate where those problems are going to be. Cool? Cool. All right, here's a little video just discussing what it is to be a stage manager. Yes? Well, since we're talking about it, have a look.
Hello, Internet. My name's Nick Acciani, and these are my adventures backstage. This week, I want to start up a section called Who's Who and the Who's Who. Whenever you go and see a show, be it on Broadway, community theater, a high school, you're going to get what's called a playbill. Anyone, no matter how big their role was, what they did for the production, they're listed in the playbill. In here, there's a bunch of jobs that people just don't know. They don't understand. They don't know. Kind of like any job has that. This section is to give a little insight into that, into these jobs. The first role I'm going to start with is one that's relatively overlooked, and honestly, if you're doing the job well, nobody knows you're there. And that is the role of the stage manager. What is a stage manager? What do they do? According to Wikipedia, which honestly has one of the best definitions for it, stage management is the practice of organizing and coordinating a theatrical production. It encompasses a variety of activities, including organizing the production and coordinating communications between various personnel, e.g. between the director and backstage crew or actors and production management. A stage manager is one who has overall responsibility for stage management and the smooth execution of a production. So that's the definition, the basic definition, a decent definition of a stage manager. So I've been lucky or unlucky enough to have worked in both small and larger venues for theater as a stage manager. I'm going to take you through kind of exactly what a stage manager does each step of the way. They start by getting hired. Like any job, you got to go in, interview, get hired. Sometimes they're brought on by the director, sometimes the producer. After you're hired, before the first rehearsal, you take about a week to get yourself organized. That's your prep week. What you're starting to prep is this. This is your Bible. This is your everything. Their official title for this is the prompt book. This book basically holds the entire show, and it's the stage manager's job to compile this book. In that book is the script, blocking, notes on every part of the production. Your first week is organizing that, putting together the entire rehearsal schedule, and getting all the supplies you need. Then the rehearsals start. Their job before each rehearsal starts, is to set up the room. So they've talked to the director, they know exactly what's going to be going on that day in rehearsal, what the director wants to cover. Honestly, I usually give myself an hour because I like to take my time. I don't like to feel rushed. Then the rehearsal starts. Their main job They have a couple main jobs, is to listen to everything that happens and write everything down. Do they take notes on blocking, which is where the actors are going on the stage? Taking notes on props. Sometimes props get cut, sometimes set pieces get cut, and that happens during rehearsals. On a more administrative side, they're keeping time. It is the stage manager's job to know when it's time for break, how long that break is, and to time that break and call everybody back to start right when that break ends, to make sure that they're letting the director know how soon those breaks are coming up, so they can wrap something up so you're not cutting them off mid-sentence. They get really annoyed when you do that, so don't. After the rehearsal, their job is to clean everything up, put everything away, closing down all the lights. After everything's cleaned up, they get to go home, and then they get to make a report of what happened in rehearsal, so they can let the producers, the director, the designers know everything that happened. So all those notes they took, all that goes into the rehearsal report, as well as actors being late, actors being on time, when breaks were taken, son of a took. What happened in rehearsal, what was expected to happen, and what actually did happen in that rehearsal, so that everyone knows where everyone is. Communication is huge. They're that bridge between the director and the designers, the director and the producer and the designers, the producer and the actors. It's like all communication funnels through the stage manager here, from all these people up here, funneling down and then funneling back out. It's a lot of responsibility. But if you're well organized, all that is a piece of cake. And that's basically the rehearsal process. Then you get into tech, which is when the main rehearsals end, right before the show starts, you add in all of the technical elements. And it's the stage manager's job to coordinate all of that. Not only does the stage manager have to take all of those notes that they took before, they're still keeping time. And on top of that, they're getting cues from all of the designers, and they are starting to run the show. So now we've gone through the rehearsals, we've taken all of those notes, we've gone through tech, we've added in all of the technical elements. Now we get to the shows. The stage manager gets there early. Again, they create a sign-in sheet for all the actors and for all their technicians. You have to coordinate with the house manager when the audience is coming in. You have to let the actors know and the crew know how long it is before the start. Generally, you give them a half an hour warning, then a 15-minute warning, then a 10-minute, then a 5-minute, and then you call places, and it's time to start the show. The stage manager, during the show, is to sit in the booth and to call all the cues. They're telling sound when to hit the sound cues, lights when to hit the lights, things flying in and out on stage, they're telling them when to go. And that's why the stage manager is so important. They are the pinnacle. They are starting everything. Everything is running through them. And not only that, they need to know what's happening on backstage. They've given a standby for the lights, and then everything breaks. Something happens backstage. There's a loud crash. The stage manager needs to know what's going on. They have to think on their feet. They have to problem solve on their feet, thinking of plan B, plan C, plan D. You're going to get up to like a plan Y sometimes. It's stressful. It's stressing me out just talking about it. I don't know how I did it for 5 years. Then the curtain closes. Breathe a sigh of relief. They shut down. They help clean up, make sure that everything's put away. And once everything is locked down, they get to go home, and they get to write another report on the performance, attendance issues, tech issues, anything that broke, just like the rehearsal reports. The performance reports are just as important. To sum all of that up, the stage manager's job is basically the technical running of a show, from start of rehearsals to closing night. They are there to make sure that everything is running smoothly and to run everything smoothly. It takes a very organized person, someone who thrives on taking chaos and making it streamlined. So that about sums up what a stage manager is, what they...
Again, I'm going to tell you, if you're ever given the opportunity to be a stage manager, it is a very daunting task. There are a lot, you are unseen. Yes, there are some people who love theater who don't like to be the star of the show. Well, welcome to the stage manager. You will not be the star of the show, hopefully, because if things go right, nobody will notice what you did. If things go wrong, everybody will be able to turn around and look at the booth and go up there and go, this guy pulling their hair out must be the charge. But if you are somebody who cannot be on time, stage management may not be for you. If you are somebody who cannot find an organizational skill, stage management may be a way to develop organizational skills, because one of the things about stage manager, you have to be incredibly organized. Yes, you have to plan for every eventuality. You are the communications between the departments. Now, you don't have to actually provide anything to the communications, but you are the network. Yes, the network doesn't know what, it has all the information there, it just allows the information to flow. You are the network that allows the information to flow from the director, from the actors, to the technicians, to the designers. Yeah, you open access to all those things. And if you're not prepared, if you're not organized, if you're not planning ahead, then things eventually are going to come to a point where they fall apart. So you've got to be able to organize that railroad schedule so that trains don't run into each other, so that tracks are used and trains go in the right way every single time. Yes, you've got to be the organizer to organize the schedule. Again, you're not adding artistic input, but you're providing the ability for the play to happen seamlessly. Yes, so that is ultimately what the stage manager's job is. Specifically, you coordinate and you communicate with the full company and organize the team to ensure the smooth running of the production. Yay. Qualities of stage manager, you need to be organized, just talk about that. You need to be dependable. When you say you're going to do something, people have to trust that is going to be done without even questioning it. You have to be dedicated, you have to be hardworking, you have to be tireless. Man, the job it requires a lot of energy. More energy than you will even know that you're exuding, because you think you're not, people will think that things are not happening, but you're going to be the first to work and the last to leave. Yes, and you're going to be dealing with everyone's issues, but in a way in which the issues are solved or resolved, at least for the production. Yes, and you are the stop. Yes, you listen for problems, but you do not gossip. Now, if for some reason somebody is allergic to cat fur for some reason, you need to let certain people know, the costume designer specifically, but maybe the set designer is going to put some set dressing that's cat fur. So you may need to make some information more public than it needs to be. But if it's just infighting, if it's just frustrations, you are this sounding board. You are the release valve. Let them blow off their steam, and then nobody else needs to know about it. Nobody else needs to be aware of it. Now, here's where it gets tough. Sometimes, I'll just make it rough. Sometimes women get pregnant. And so, let's say there's a fight scene that's involved in the play, and suddenly the actress discovers that she is in the early stages of pregnancy. And so you notice that they're not doing the fight scene the way it has been choreographed. They may not be doing the role, they may not be doing the punches, etc. And you may wonder, and so you need to take the person aside and say, what's going on? And if you find out they're pregnant, you may need to tell somebody like the producer, because they may need to be recast, have an understudy go on for the duration while they're dealing with pregnancies. Yes, I mean, there are serious issues that there may not be a resolution. And it's horrible, but life is more important than a play. I hate to tell you that. We are just doing plays. Yes. So sometimes you can be involved in situations that are dire, let's put it that way. And you have to be able to know how to handle that situation. Yes. If it's just people being, upset with each other because they have halitosis, buy some certs, find a remedy that doesn't need anybody else to know about it. You need to be transparent. You don't need to be somebody who is hiding vendettas. Yes, you need to be somebody who's open and honest. Those are, again, tough qualities, but they are the qualities that'll make for a good stage manager. Yes, and if you don't have those qualities, if you'd like to develop those qualities, stage management is all for you. Yeah, that is what stage managers need to be. All right, I'm pretty much going to go through this bullet points as a bullet point, because again, this is not by any means a be-all, end-all list, but I will guarantee you, if you go through this bullet list, you'll get the sense of what a stage manager's responsibilities are, and they change during the course of, we'll talk about the 4 phases of production here at the end, and so they will change slightly as you go through the phases of productions. But first, you're going to create and set up a rehearsal schedule with the director. Easy. You need to sit down with the director. You need to realize how much of the script you have, how many days of rehearsal you have, especially if you're dealing with an equity situation. Again, actors' equity, we'll talk more about unions later in the semester, but unions have certain rules. And so if you're dealing with an equity member, you know that you have to have a 5-minute break every hour or a 10-minute break every hour and a half. And so you're the person who's responsible for having that stopwatch. So we may need a physical thing like a stopwatch to help you work with these things. Or you have one on your camera phone probably. But you need to create a prompt script. We'll talk much more about that next class period. The prompt script is going to have the script in it with the blocking notation. The blocking are the physical movement of the actors around stage. Sometimes you're going to write down words that tell you how they move, and sometimes you may draw little pictures with little X's to show arrows, to show how people get around the stage. Whatever works best for you to understand. Yes? You're going to create plots, like costume plots, like light plots, like sound plots. Now, for instance, let's talk about light plot. A light plot to a lighting designer is a very different thing than a light plot for a stage manager. For a stage manager, when I say a light plot, it is a list of all the light cues in the show, where they go, what their number is, how long they may last, and what they do. Right? It's just a list. A lighting designer is going to give you a plot that shows you where the lights are hung and give you a schedule that tells you what each light is and where it is and how it's focused and all those sort of things. So again, a lighting designer, when you say light plot, means something totally different than a stage manager. We're talking about stage management, we're talking about light plot, it's just a list. Sound plot, same thing. They may have the sound designers may have a complete plot of where the speakers are, notating the type of speaker, indicating what channels are connected to which, etc. With a sound plot, all you're interested in is the levels, the running length time, the cue words or cue sequence, and if there's any overlay, etc., things like that. They're live sounds, recorded sounds, things like that might matter. But you're creating those things. You're arranging, you're coordinating, arranging fittings for costumes, for wigs, yes. Oftentimes there'll be things like fight calls, dance calls, singing rehearsal, warm-up rehearsals, yes. Those things are all under purview, yes. Now, again, you're gonna have assistant stage managers who you may be able to assign to certain things to take care of those things, but again, ultimately the responsibility comes back to the stage manager. You're gonna coordinate with the theater, all the departments and disseminate all the information. The tool you're gonna use is going to be, during rehearsal, what's called a rehearsal report. I know, very dramatic. And during production, it's gonna be called a production report. And everyone should have a department listed on this rehearsal performance report so that if a prop breaks during a performance, you can tell the props department that we broke the wooden spoon, whatever it is, so that you can have it fixed by the next performance, yes? You have a seam rip in a dress because it got stood on by somebody. Again, that's a note that needs to go into the production performance report, so the costume department knows they need to take care of mending the piece. Somebody goes out sick and the understudy goes on. Again, understudies are a great tool, but they often need to have fittings because they may not be the exact same size and shape that the characters, and they may have their own set of complete costumes, so the wardrobe crew may need to know. So you need to coordinate and disseminate information among the crews. You're going to organize the move-in and move-out schedules. In other words, figure out where the move-in day, where the strike day is. Not by any means are you required to, the technical director will run those things, but you need to facilitate so that you know when the props need to be transferred from a rehearsal room to the performance space. You need to make sure that everybody is on the same page as far as times to arrive. Actors, if they're not a part of the crew, need to be out of the way until actors are called. You know, you need to make sure things run smoothly and everybody knows when they're supposed to arrive and when they're supposed to leave. Yes, and leaving can be a very important thing because again, at the end of the rehearsal, you may have a paint crew that needs to come in and paint the floor or something like that. So again, not just arriving, but also when they leave, they leave. You need to make sure that all furniture and props and things that are borrowed, costumes, anything like that, are returned at the end of the performance. Again, not your job to return them, but you need to make sure you coordinate with all the performance people that anything that is borrowed from anyone is returned. That way the theater has a good name in the community. And again, you're just helping to run things smoothly. Any kind of alterations to sets or costumes or anything that has to do with the run of the show, you need to make sure that if fly lines have a kink in them or whatever's happened during the course of the show. If there's any kind of slippage, if there's a counterweight system that's out of weight, you need to make sure the crew lets you know, and then you need to let the technical director know that weights have changed, etc. Yes. You need to cue the light. This is a big thing that you're going to do during the show. From your prompt script, you're going to cue the light and sound cues. call goes, the G word, as it's called, you only say if you want a light or sound cue to GO. Otherwise, you spell it. Don't GO until I say GO. Because as soon as you say GO, somebody's going to push a button. So again, calling standbys, calling waiting cues, having warning cues, all that sort of stuff. Good stage managers know how to do that well, and you will learn that ability as you go through and as you become a better stage manager. Backstage areas, make sure they're clean. Make sure the crew knows how to clean up things, where the mops and because again, people spill drinks. Now, should you be drinking anything other than water in your costumes? No. Again, that goes to the rules we'll talk about, but you're going to create the rules and maintain the rules for the company, all that sort of stuff. Risk assessment, what is dangerous, what might be slippery, having access to a mop, that sort of stuff. You want to make sure that things that are used in performance, let's say you've got somebody swinging on a rope, you and the crew need to make sure, again, not to be you necessarily, but you need to make sure that somebody has checked the tying of the knot and checked the rope to make sure there's not any, that it's still safe. Yes? Again, visual inspection often is fine with that, but every once in a while you might want to talk to the actor who actually does the trick and say how are things feeling. Because again, an actor's going to know when things are not feeling exactly the same, especially on something like that. The last thing you need, Spider-Man was a show on Broadway that had several Spider-Men get injured because things seemed fine. And again, you got a professional crew as best you can, but ultimately there were fails, so that should not happen. You need to call, the rehearsals and performances are your shows, they're your meetings. You're the one who gives the calls, you're the one who tells the crew when to be there, you're the one who tells the actors when to be there. For instance, let's say you have a 2-act show and there's a character in the show that doesn't appear until the 2nd act. That character may come up to you and say, listen, is there any way I can show up at show call at show curtain time as opposed to half hour? Again, that's your call. How comfortable do you feel not having that actor in there? It all goes back to how comfortable I feel that actor's been to every rehearsal and been on time and always been faithful and text me and whenever they were late, etc. I think I'd feel okay with that. Yes, and so that's fine. One less thing to worry about until they get there, right? If there's someone who are always late or 10 minutes one way or the other, it may be better to get them there at half hour and say, listen, if I trusted you more, you show me this first week you're here at half hour every day, we'll talk about moving your call back to showtime. Yes, and again, you're making the rules, right? But it's ultimately you're the person who calls the crew. Usually the calls are for the crew an hour before the showtime, for the cast a half hour. But again, for instance, when they did Beauty and the Beast, it took the Beast 3 hours to get into makeup. So his call was at least 3 hours before showtime because you had to get 3 hours of makeup on. Now, the more they did it, the better they got at it. And so they were able to incorporate things and make little shortcuts so that it eventually became only about an hour and a half process to put the makeup on. So eventually his call time got a little bit later. But those are the things that you're coordinating. How long does it take? Do you need any kind of additional calls like dance calls, photo calls, etc.? Again, you're going to maintain the prop and furniture list during the run, make sure anything breaks, needs to be fixed, and coordinate with the rest of the staff if you're touring. In other words, if you're going from one space to another, you need to make sure that the lighting people have contact information for the light people and the tech people have, etc. So again, it's not your job necessarily to call or email those people, but it's your job to make sure that everyone has contact information and that information is flowing. And as a matter of fact, oftentimes stage managers are the ones, because you are making the initial call and tours, even though the tour may have been booked by the production company months, if not years in advance, oftentimes the first call the local staff is going to get is from the stage manager of the touring company about a month out saying, hey, everything's still cool? Because again, things happen in theaters. Air conditioners break, whatever. And so there may be some rules that have changed from the initial contract as far as where the loading dock may be or what the access may be. Oh yeah, I was gonna call you. Well, it's better to know a month ahead of time than a week ahead of time. So again, the more you can stay on par with those sort of things, the easier you're gonna make things ultimately in the end, the way things work. All right, stage manager's job in television is what they call a floor manager. Specifically because the floor manager is the person who's going to cue the actor, the talent, on the camera. Again, with floor managers, the biggest difference is that you've got a director in the booth who's calling the light, calling the shift of cameras. And so that would, there's similarities to the floor manager, but it really is a completely different item, even though you would have the closest thing would be the floor manager to the stage manager in theater. The production manager in movies is very much a stage manager. You're making sure that people are on site, costumes are ready, you've got enough guns for the soldiers, so you don't have 100 soldiers and 90 guns for the war scene, etc. You got enough blood or whatever it is that everybody knows how much materials you need so that everything's on par, and you've got enough food to feed everybody at lunch and dinner breaks. Again, not your job to do that sort of stuff, your job to make sure that it is all coordinated. So that is the production manager's job in a movie. So those are the closest things to the stage manager in other venues. Cool. All right, from your book, this is the 8 characteristics of a stage manager according to your book, and I like them all, so I'm going to read those all to you. First of all, you assume total responsibility. Whose fault is it? My fault. Yes? Let's figure out the solution. Fault is a horrible thing. Whose fault is this? Who the hell cares whose fault it is? It doesn't matter whose fault it is. What matters is why it happened and what we can do to fix it. So get past the fault. Assume the responsibility. Later, when you have the post-incident report, you can actually find out that there was a crew member who was sound asleep during this cue, who missed flying this object in, so it wasn't there, and that's why this thing crashed into it, whatever. Okay, great. We now know the sequence of events that happened and that caused the accident. Whose fault is it? The crew member fell asleep on your watch. It is your responsibility to do things so the crew members don't fall asleep in shows. And again, it's horrible to think that that is true, but if people make mistakes, they make mistakes because they're not aware. And so sometimes, we're going to talk about headsets. Headsets, a little form of communication. Typically, you don't want any conversation on headsets, but in my experience as a stage manager, when you're doing a show that has very few cues in it, Death Trap, the first couple of scenes are just long scenes, 30, 45-minute scenes where there's a cue right at the beginning and a cue right at the end. Now, I'm not talking about the second act when there's a cue every 3 seconds. But in the first act, you might allow for a little, at least chatter to make sure that people are awake. Yes? Do I like people looking at their cell phones while they're running a show? Not typically. As soon as you go into a warning for a cue, everything, cell phones, books, whatever you're doing, chatter stops. Because we're now in a warning for a cue, right? But in between, again, it's your call as stage manager. How much do you trust your crew, right? And if you've got somebody in the spot booth who's been working all day in the scene shop and is pretty tired, it might be worth singing a song, saying, hey, what are we doing after the show? Anything to keep them involved so when the spot cue comes up, they're not leaning their head back snoring. That happens. It happens. Yes? So it's your show. Keep responsibility. Keep it cool. Whatever happens, you know what? It's a show. As long as nobody's died, it's going to be a good story someday. I was doing a production, again, I hate to do a lot of these, but we were doing a production of Fiddler on the Roof where the guy who played Fiddler was in his 70s and had done a million different productions of Fiddler on the Roof because he looked like Tevye. And there was one scene, If I Were a Rich Man, where he and his little cart are on stage, and during individual productions of Fiddler on the Roof, he would have exited or entered on either side of the stage. And Tevye has one costume change in the whole show, and it's right after If I Were a Rich Man when he changes into his Sabbath prayer costume. And it's a pretty quick change. So there was this crew stage right, which is where he was supposed to go with his little cart. He's supposed to tootle off, if I were a wealthy man, cart, right? Waddle off, crew's there to take the wagon off, get him out of the way, change him into Sabbath prayer, push him on for Sabbath prayer. He started waddling off stage left. And so suddenly here's everybody on the headset going, he's going left, he's going left. And so you can literally hear, three costume people, a prop person, whoever else, running around the back of the stage. And of course, like I said, he was a 70-year-old man. And so by the time he got to the other side of the stage, they were there. They trained, dropped him, got the cart off, did whatever they had to do, pushed him back on stage. Okay, at the moment, it's a tragedy. Oh my God, what are we gonna do? Keep it cool, all right? What's the solution? It's easier to get the crew to go to the man than the man to go to the crew. Yes? So find a quick solution, get through it, tape it up what best you can, get through the show, figure out what the problem was during the post-show discussion with your crew, find a way so that that never happens again. In this case, the solution was we had a person with a flashlight. And no matter at the end of every scene he did in the whole show from then on, a person in the wings with a flashlight would point right at him. So the answer became, when you're through with your song, look to both sides. If you see a flashlight, go that way. Because he was just not able to process. He knew all the words because, like I said, he'd done it a billion years. But how to get where he was going, clueless. Yes? So keep it cool. Keep your mouth shut and your eyes open. This is tough. Man, when you got a good piece of gossip, man, man, good stuff. Man, you become a sounding board. Keep your eyes open. I will tell you a little trick that I use. It drives students crazy, but and you know, I'm not a big party goer, but the few times that I'll go out with people, you notice who's sitting next to each other at dinner or at the party after the show, who sits next to each other or who's talking to who or whatever. And so you just keep an eye out for it. You know, if the leading lady is talking to the second, spear chucker from the left, and for some reason the leading man might be jealous of that in the future, yes, it's just something to keep your eye on. Are these people and their blossoming relationship or their falling apart relationship? These people who are dating, are they still lovey-dovey halfway through the show? Are they starting to come in separately? You know, are they starting to not be as cheerful towards one another as they used to be? Again, just little clues that can help you to plan your day to keep your eye out. Again, eyes open, mouth shut. But be aware, because again, it may solve or avoid conflict down the road. Think ahead. Again, the better you can plan for this, and I'll tell you, it is so nice, it is so great when there's one night where there's something that you, during a production meeting, say, well, what happens if this happens, right? Let's say the phone doesn't ring. We got a phone ringer. And so you have a stage manager backstage with a bell. And one night the phone doesn't ring. And you say to the assistant stage manager headset, ring your bell. And they ring the bell and somebody goes and picks up the phone. Does the audience go, what, that was a bell ring? Well, sure, for half a second. But the show goes on. Because the dialogue in the script is hello, yes, I'll be right with you. And there's no way to cover for that. Or it's very difficult to cover from that. There's always a way. Yes? But then you can sit back and go, ha, see, I thought that might happen and I've covered for myself, right? So you get a little bonus point. Be considerate. You know, being considerate never hurts anybody. Just being kind, being happy. How you doing? How's your day? Hello, welcome. You looking forward to a good show tonight? Positive, energy, yes. And again, it's draining. At the end of the day, you're gonna be tired. But all those little things that help other people get up and going help the show. So that's what you need to do. Yes, maintain positive attitude, sense of humor, baby. Having a joke of the day. Again, jokes are tough. You have to understand when you get too far and cross lines. But having things like how much did Santa's sleigh cost, and having it was free because it was on the house. Not that it's Christmas now, but you know, having little jokes that don't insult anybody. It's hard. It's nice to have just a little joke of the day thing, just to get people started and encourage them to go and sign in. Have you signed in? There's a pretty good joke over there. Have a little candy dish, yes, a little mint tray next to the sign-in sheet. Anything to get people to go and sign in, because people forget, yes. And so if you can say, "How about that joke?" and they say, "What joke?" You say, "You haven't signed in yet." Right? That's a lot better than being yelled at, right? All right, so find ways of being entertaining. Be organized and efficient, we talked about that. Again, the thing about organization is that your time is not wasted. Yes, the more efficient, the more organized you are, the more efficient you will run, right? Less sludge in the system. And again, be punctual, be dependable. Cool. All right, let's talk about this real quick. Dealing with supervisors. dealing with people who are higher in the chain than you, people who are the director, producer, the technical director, all right? Those are people who could all fire you, basically. First of all, you want to listen. You want to listen carefully to what they are telling you. And a lot of times, here's the hard part, a lot of times, let's just say the director and the producer don't see eye to eye on the way a show is going to be done. Unfortunately for you, it's a horrible situation to be in because it's not your job to decide that argument, but ultimately you are the one who's calling the show. So you need to listen. The director, I'm going to say, is the person that the producer has hired to interpret the play. So ultimately the director, whatever the director says is what you're going to do. If the producer has a problem with that, it'll take some chutzpah on your part, but you need to let the producer know that your job is to do what the director has told you to do. If the director isn't doing it the way the producer wants, the producer needs to fire the director or take care of it that way. It's not your job to circumvent the process the way the director has done it. Now, I'm just being honest here. The director and the producer didn't see eye to eye. The director has opening night and leaves. You're never going to see the director again. And they're probably not going to have a lot of people who are going to be around again. And the producer always wanted something just that was nagging them for whatever reason to happen. It may be a nice little feather in your cap for the producer if after the director has left, you acquiesce to whatever the producer wants. Let's say there's an actor who has a hat that the producer can't stand. Yes? And the costume designer, don't let Val see this part of the video. But it may be the producer, again, not the actor. Screw the actor. But, I guess I can't say that, but if your superior is somebody that you get the sense that there's things that need to work a little bit different, again, it's a tough call because they're your superior. But ultimately your responsibility is to your director. Let's just put it that way. You can deal with other situations as you see fit. Yes, but ultimately, again, dealing with a supervisor can be a very difficult situation. Again, the happier you've made everybody, the jollier it is, the more we're on the same page from the beginning, the easier it is. Because again, if solution A isn't the answer and solution B isn't the answer, and they've had to choose between A and B, oftentimes the answer is C. How about let's find something else to avoid this conflict? I will tell you a trick that I have as a technical director so that you're aware of it. Generally, producers, directors will have something that annoys them in a show. And they will come to me as a technical director very early on and say, are you gonna fix this? And they very early on let me know what it is that's driving them nuts. And so, I know, just from experience, I've done this for 30 years, 40 years. From experience, you fix that thing that night, the next night they're gonna find something else to look at. But I know from experience that if you let that thing sit there, they will focus on that one thing to the be-all, end-all of anything else. And then if you fix it right at the end, you fix the problem, but you haven't had to have 50 or 60 other little stupid things that they come up with to fix. So, having known that about a technical director, as a stage manager, when you're working with the technical director, it may be that you just have to say, is it on the list? And they will say, yes, it's on the list. And then don't give them the note again. Yes? If it's on the list, it's on the list. If the director says something, how about this? It's on the list. Start looking at something else. It will be fixed. Right? I've just found that it is true in my life that directors who get bored with plays try and find other problems. Not just in sets, it can be costumes, it can be other things. I had to go on stage and repaint an entire set one night, the night before a show, because the director, the preview night, got tired of looking at how bright the set was. And because the lighting designer argued better than I did, that it would be more difficult for the lighting designer to redo every cue in the show and make the set dimmer I got to get out a can of black spray paint and spray paint the whole, and cover the entire set with black paint. As the actors in the stage were getting notes from the director, I was spray painting the set, a tone of black over the top of it. And you could hear the gasps from the actors, what is he doing? I was just darkening the set. The nice thing is for me, as a set designer, I had already taken pictures of the other set. So I had the pictures the way I wanted it. So I was fine. Fine, you went dark. So again, dealing with those things can be an issue. Dealing with your peers. First of all, kindness. Man, don't act like they're severe. Ask. Ask. Could you please? Do you mind? Could you? Don't tell. Don't instruct. They're your peers. They're your equals. They're not your children. Don't go up to somebody and say, Cody, mop the floor. Cody, could you mop the floor? I know it's not your day, but so-and-so's late. Whatever. Ask. Just ask. If you need a prop. Again, let's say you're working, again, I'm just going to use Alabama Shaker Festival example. You're working on a show, and for you, something very important is the pair of glasses this actor's got to have. Oh, God, we just added these glasses today. We need them tomorrow, Charles. Well, Charles has got 3 other shows he's worrying about that have levels of need. Let him prioritize the absolute need of glasses for this actor, right? Just in your production notes, you may send the notes and then call him and say, Charles, please, the actor needs different glasses because of this or that or whatever the problem is. But just ask the question. I promise you're going to get a better response if you ask than tell. Yes? Now, dealing with subordinates, people who are lower the crew. Yes? Don't take lip. There's going to be people who are gung-ho. You got to really hold them back because they will do everything. They will mop the floor. They will, do everything, and the crew that aren't doing their stuff will lag behind. Assign people different things and then rotate it, right? Especially if you've got long runs, have somebody sweep, have somebody mop, have somebody place props, right? But rotate it. And again, especially in a long run, that can be a valuable tool because that way when somebody's ill, if everybody has at some point set all the props, then you know that people know how to do it. If only one person has ever set all the props in the show, even though you've got a nice little list of all the props that have been set, things shift, things change. People become, again, personal props, let's say things like glasses. The actor may go up to the prop person and say, you know what, instead of setting these on this table every night, can I just keep it with my costume and I'll just put it here? Because as a character, I would have my glasses with me all the time. And so there may be discussions like that happen after opening about placement of things that you may not know if you're not running props backstage, right? So you may have it on a list someplace, but it's changed and that person gets sick. People don't know the changes because you haven't updated things. But again, if you notice that the prop, follow behind people, and if you notice that a certain prop isn't being placed anymore, ask a question. Don't get mad. Just say, hey, are we not setting the glasses anymore? No, the actor talked to the director and they decided it was okay to just have it a personal prop. Okay, well, thanks. You don't have to get mad at them. Were you circumvented in the process? Sure. Do you know about it now? Sure. That's why you think ahead. That's why you follow behind, double check everything. Yes? All right. Let's talk about the 4 phases of production. And again, we're not going to talk extensively about these. These are just what's coming up. You have pre-production. First of all, auditions are the dividing line between the first 2 stages. Pre-production, often called your prep week, is your time to organize things like your prompt script. We'll talk about all these things later, but pre-production is your time to make calendars, make contact sheets, plan for, create a list and a description of the characters in case you need them for auditions, that sort of stuff. We're gonna talk a couple of days or a couple of weeks about the character scene breakdown. You're gonna do those, go through the script and do your analysis of it. Yes, that's pre-production. Then you're gonna get to auditions. Auditions is a whole little big dividing line, a whole day on auditions. And then once you get into auditions, you are in the rehearsal phase, yes? Now, two of the 4 phases of the production are in the rehearsal phase. The first is when you're gathering the show together, you're doing table work, you're doing blocking, the show is not up and running, yes? The second phase during the rehearsal phase is the tech week. And it is when you suddenly have to start adding the technical elements. Now again, different shows, right? You got a show that has 8 light cues, that's not a tough transition. You're only adding 8 light cues. You're doing Hamilton on Broadway, there are thousands of light cues, that's gonna take a little while, yes? And so the tech week, as we're going to call it, maybe a tech month, yes? And you may have 8 stage managers. One that calls the spotlight cues, one that calls the light cues, one that calls the sound cues, one that calls the deck cues, one that calls the fly cues. You may have one called spot cues. You may have 10 stage managers and a production manager above them. They're calling the show in order for it to happen because it is so technically advanced. Or you may just have yourself in a booth and you may be running the sound and light cues yourself. Yes, there's no shifts. So there you go. Anyway, so that the tech rehearsal process, and then the performance. Once you get into performances, that's a whole nother phase. And again, that typically is more mundane for you because you're just repeating the same thing you did last time. Again, the problems arise when you have absences, people that are tardy, all that sort of stuff. Yes, you're just making sure that nobody's sick, whatever, keeping the show up and running. Yes, so those are 4 phases of production. Again, we're going to end here with a little video talking about how to get working as a stage manager in the industry, and we'll see you all next time.
A stage manager is strictly there to facilitate, supervise, and to make other people's visions come true. You're making sure that the play is happening when it's supposed to be happening, that everyone that's involved with the show and the play knows what they're doing. So in pre-production, the stage manager's job a lot of times is just pumping out a lot of paperwork. Making schedules, printing out the schedule, the script, scene breakdowns. Inside the rehearsal room, you generally have your actors, your stage management team, your director, and his or her team. And then outside of the rehearsal room, you have a whole army of people working to put this production on. Hey Stan, hey Scott, how are y'all today? People that build the sets, the people that build the costumes, the people that are physically hanging the lights, the people that are testing and running the sound cables. And so the stage management really is the key to letting everyone know and be on the same page as far as information. Another Wednesday, another show, right? So in the rehearsal room, the director is very much in charge and the stage manager is there to help facilitate and keep that room on track. And then once you move into the theater, that kind of shifts. And it's the stage manager who is helping making sure everything's happening at the right time. So you're putting in the light cues, you know, and then you also are having the actors. And the actors are like, oh, so where am I supposed to be? Places? So basically you kind of play the parent and you just make sure everyone's doing their right job. Then you move into previews. It's a great process for whenever you start to invite an audience into the space, into the theater. You finally have a live audience to bounce and feel their energy and just feel how that changes things. And then once you open, that'd kind of be the next phase in the play's process or journey. Then at that moment, nothing's supposed to be changed. Go. From that moment on, that is the show. These are the lights, these are the levels, this is the set, that is the costume piece you're gonna have, the play's frozen. Alright, kitchen and reset. It's your job then to make sure that the director's vision is being maintained. In college, I discovered stage management, and I kind of just fell into it. I like things to be in their row. Everything has its place in my apartment, in my life, and I'm always on time. You know, I'm just kind of, I guess I'm that type. I'm that person. And so stage management just kind of came naturally because stage management's about making schedules and adhering to those schedules. And because if you don't adhere to them, then everything else backtracks and it's money. Time is money. I found theater young and it was always my dream to be in it in some way, shape, or form. And here I am, I'm 25 and I'm in it. I love it. I love what I do. And I've been very fortunate. I won't lie, especially theater. A lot of it is about who you know and when you know them. Your talent and skill get you to the table, but then everything else is fate. And I've been very lucky to be so fortunate in my fate. Well, I've had some great cards thrown my way.
Don't tell me not to